As many of you know, Sharon and I are getting ready to celebrate, Yirtzeh Hashem, with God's help, our very important moment in our family's life, our daughter's wedding. And we feel deeply blessed. And another part of planning for a wedding, I realize, and although I've been to many weddings, and I've been a part of many weddings, but not like this, is that you have the blessing of really receiving another family. Suddenly you're given this additional whole new family that becomes part of your family. And so to really get this process going, our son-in-law's to-be's, there's really not a word for that, our son-in-law to-be's family invited us out to LA, where he's from, for Thanksgiving, for a really nice engagement party. It was the kind of trip that I really love. I got off the plane and started eating, and I kept eating the whole time until I got back on the plane. I was actually eating as I got back on, but that was unnecessary. We had a lovely dinner in LA the first night, a lot of kosher restaurants. We had Thanksgiving dinner with his family. We had an engagement party. We had Shabbos dinner. They actually had a very lovely meat kiddush at shul. Just saying, meat kiddush. That's. I don't want to do any foreshadowing here, but for someone who can't eat dairy, that's like the Garden of Eden on a plate. And of course, we stepped right into the fun world of Jewish geography, right in the synagogue that they go to, a modern Orthodox synagogue. I met someone I knew from New York, and our son Ari immediately bumped into an old camper of his from Camp Ramah in the Rockies. After more food at Shabbat lunch, we then walked over to a local park for a fun game of what we would call tennis baseball. Everyone familiar with that? So you just play baseball, but you use a tennis racket and a tennis ball. It's a lot safer, and everyone can hit really far. Really far. Baseball is a pretty beloved sport in both of our families, and it was really nice to connect. We especially enjoyed trying to teach our son-in-law-to-be's niece, who's 3 years old, how to play baseball, and she was good, like with the tennis racket. She hit the ball and then would run right at the pitcher. She thought it was like a kind of that game, but we worked on getting her to first base. On our way back after the game, we were walking back to the hotel, and someone started calling out, "Ari! Ari!" Now, there's lots of Aris in the world, so we're like, oh, someone's on the soccer field, whatever. I ignored it. But the Aris didn't stop. And a boy kept calling out Ari, and he ran up to us and said, "Is your son Ari?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I think he was my counselor at Camp Ramah in the Rockies. This was not the kid from earlier." Now, Ari had already, as he likes to do, had already gone up ahead. So we had to call him back, and sure enough, the two of them reunited and shared all these fun stories from Ramah and the Rockies and their bunk. It's very lovely. The boys' grandparents then walked over to us. They were wearing kind of sunglasses, and it was hard to see their faces, and we all were, so we couldn't quite see each other perfectly. They were in LA for Thanksgiving, taking care of their grandson, and they were so delighted by the Camp Ramah connection. They said, "What a small Jewish world." I replied, "Yes, it is a small Jewish world, but it's even smaller because the two of you were my congregants 25 years ago." They looked at me again with new eyes, and the Shapiros realized that they knew Sharon and me. They were from my first shul in Highland Park, Illinois, just outside Chicago. I taught all their kids. Their son, Matt Shapiro, works at the same shul, Temple Beth Am, is Rabbi Willis's mother, who's here, Natalie Weiss, Rucha Haba, welcome. And we all shared a nice laugh. There's nothing like reconnecting with someone after many, many years apart. There's a special kind of feeling that you get. And this morning's Torah reading, Parashat Va-yishlah, which Lucy beautifully introduced and read, is really a parsha of connection and reconnection, as Rabbi Willis spoke about when she introduced the Haftarah. Yaakov and Esav, these two brothers, have been apart for 20 years. The last moment, right? Esav filled with hate because he's so angry at what Yaakov did, taking away, deceiving, dealing with him inappropriately to get his birthright, deceiving his father for the blessing. He wants to kill him. Yaakov runs away. They spend 2 decades apart. In the meantime, each one of them builds a family, an entire life together. And now it's time for Jacob to return to his homeland, to go home. The Torah paints the scene really powerfully, as we read this morning. Right, Jacob lines up his whole family. First, you're kind of thinking, like, what's happening here? He lines them all up, and then he goes forward, out ahead of them. The Torah says, it says, he himself, meaning Jacob, went out ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esav ran out to meet him, embraced him, fell on his neck, kissed him, and wept. The older brother, who had wanted to murder his younger brother, now runs towards him. He embraces him, he kisses him, and these 2 men stand there and cry together. It's a really powerful image. These 2 brothers who have every reason to have been enemies and maybe to stay enemies, instead are weeping in each other's arms. I think it's one of the most moving scenes in the entire Torah. And it should be noted that the Torah, the Hebrew Bible, is not embarrassed by having 2 men, these leaders, crying. It uses tears to mark some of the most holy moments of reconciliation and love. It's kind of especially striking because there are other ancient texts that speak of men crying, but never at a moment like this. It's usually after loss and death. But here in our tradition, the tears come at this moment of reconciliation, when the relationship is still alive and can be rebuilt, not after death and rupture. The Torah dares us to show that real strength comes from vulnerability. That sometimes the holiest thing 2 people can do is to fall upon each other's necks and simply cry. The rabbis, of course, grab on to this moment, and they notice every detail. The word that the Torah uses for they kissed each other, Va-yishlah, has these dots in the Torah scroll above each of the letters. One opinion of the rabbis, because they seize upon this, why are these dots there? One opinion looks at it negatively. Maybe Esav didn't really kiss his brother wholeheartedly, and the dots are pointing to something negative. But I much prefer the other quote from the Gemara, from the Talmud, that says, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, quote, "It is well known that Esav hated Jacob, but in that moment, his compassion was stirred, and he kissed him with all of his heart." I love that reading. It doesn't romanticize the history and ignore all their pain. It's there. It's real. But it's precisely there that it insists that people can change. Old scripts can be interrupted. Hearts can soften. And then just a few verses later, Jacob says to Esav one of the most memorable lines in the Torah, Ra'iti fanecha kirot penei Elohim. Right? He says first, please accept these gifts from my hands. And then he says what this moment means. He says, for to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Later teachers seize upon this verse and universalize it and say that every human face carries the spark of the divine image. To fully look at another person, especially someone with whom you may have had some degree of tension or distance, that can be an encounter with the divine presence. Centuries later, this gets picked up in many places. I was thinking of Victor Hugo, the French author from the 19th century, wrote Les Miserables. He takes the Torah's idea in one line. To love another person is to see the face of God. Maybe he didn't realize it, but he's summarizing Parashat Va-yishlah. Our Torah doesn't just offer us this beautiful wording and this poetry about it. It enshrines this in halacha, in Jewish law. And it does it in a really powerful way with blessings. The Talmud in Masechet Brachot, which talks about what blessings do we say at different moments, says the following. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, if you see your friend after a period of not seeing them for 30 days, you say, Shechianu. Right? This blessing for new moments that happen usually every year, or when we put on new clothing. We just did it as Lucy put on her new talit for the first time. We say it when you see someone after this gap. But then he continues and says, if you see your friend after 12 months, then you say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei hametim. Praised are you, God, who resurrects the dead. This is a blessing from the Amidah that we say, often without even thinking about it. Obviously referring to a time in a realm beyond. But he says, actually say that blessing when you see someone. Seeing a beloved friend after a long time is kind of a resurrection of sorts. To lay eyes upon each other again is to realize that you've come through this period, that you've come through all this time, and now you get to be together again. I think on a deeper level, what the rabbis are saying is that a relationship that may have been frozen on some level, it can become a little bit dead, but it's not over. When we reconnect, when we pick up the phone, I know I keep using this and everyone tells me, it's this, Rabbi, it's this. When we pick up the phone, when we look into each other's faces, when we reconnect, we do this little act of mechayei hametim, of bringing something back to life. And notice that the blessing isn't triggered by some light connection, maybe like scrolling through your phone. It's by actually seeing someone, by seeing their face, by presence. Then you could say the bracha. Now, of course, I'll speak for myself. It's hard to maintain relationships over time. There's so many things that pull us in our busy lives. We move, we change jobs. For some of us, we parent. Kids grow up. We age. We say we really should get together. And then months, and sometimes even years pass. Sometimes there might also be some hurt, a misunderstanding, a sharp word, a feeling of being judged or forgotten. And so like Jacob and Esau, we go our separate ways. Maybe it feels safer not to pick up the phone, not to risk any awkwardness, not to open up that old file labeled complicated relationship with so-and-so. But our Parsha and our tradition gently nudge us the other way. They tell us you don't need to be stuck in the past. Old stories and hurts are real and they're powerful, but they're not our destiny. Even Esau, the archetypal angry brother, can run into an embrace. Even Jacob, the archetypal trickster brother, can bow 7 times and say, to see your face is to see the face of God. We can learn something. It doesn't require a grand, dramatic gesture. Maybe just think of one person someone with whom you've lost touch, someone you miss, or at least someone who mattered to you along the way. And maybe this week, send even just a text, write an email, or make that call. No speech, maybe, doesn't need a big explanation. Just say, you popped into my mind. How are you? It might not lead to that big Jacob Esav embrace and hug and kiss and tears, but it might bring a little bit of new life into an area where things have gone quiet. Might, like you say in some way, seeing your face again or hearing your voice is a little glimpse of God. The changes in my family this year, I'm very aware that life is about these connections. Old ones being rekindled, new ones being formed. Parashat Va-yishlah reminds us not to take these for granted. It shows us that two brothers who could have stayed enemies choose instead a different path. So the next time you find yourselves in a park playing tennis, baseball, as I'm sure you do, take a moment, look around. You never know which old friend or which piece of your own past might be waiting a few feet away, ready to call, Ari, Shabbat Shalom.